Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today we're doing another lab review. This is another one of my clients who I started seeing because they've been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, they've been put on thyroid medication, they started with a low dose, 25 micrograms, and over time, their doctor kept increasing and decreasing the doses to find the magic dose that was going to make them feel well. And after years of trying to find the magic dose and finding that it just didn't exist, she wound up in my office and we're working to improve her health and well-being. Now, the first set of labs on the surface might look the best to somebody. TSH is 1.82. Total T4 and total T3 weren't run by her medical doctor. They didn't care about those values. Free T4 was run. It was within the reference range at 1.3. They did run T3, and free T3 is at 2.6. This is lab normal, but we would look at that in functional medicine and probably say it's a bit too low. Reverse T3 is 18. It's at the top end of the lab, what I would consider an optimal range. It's still within the lab reference range. But this is the key thing. This person's free T3 to free T4 ratio is 0.24. This is when you use picomoles per milliliter or picomoles per liter. It's too low. There's an underconversion going on here. So how does the patient feel? She has both hyperthyroid symptoms and hypothyroid symptoms at the same time, does not feel well. So she's on and her TPO antibodies are 96. Thyroglobulin antibodies are 3. Both of those are elevated. She just doesn't feel well. So we take a look at these values, and as crazy as this might sound, based on the signs and symptoms, I recommend that she's probably overmedicated. And why would I say that? Even though her TSH is within the reference range, free T4, free T3 are within the reference range, it's because there's this underconversion. When you see an underconversion of T4 to T3, this typically indicates that there's some excessive cell stress response and there's an adaptive decreased conversion of T4 to T3. This isn't broken physiology, this is adaptive physiology. So when somebody has mixed signs and symptoms, hypo and hyperthyroid symptoms at the same time, there's a couple things going on. One is that they're often over-medicating themselves, or they're getting over-prescribed to treat a lab value, TSH, and not to evaluate what's going, and not really to their own health and well-being. So there's a couple things that need to be considered. Giving somebody thyroid medication does not fix thyroid physiology. There's two primary drivers of hypothyroidism, glandular hypothyroidism. It's either immune-driven or it's iodine deficiency. Those are the two big drivers. The third one would be that you've had your thyroid gland destroyed, atrophied, removed, whatever, because there was some type of cancer, thyroiditis problem going on, hyperthyroidism going on, and so they remove it. But even in that situation, there's an immune inflammatory process going on. Removing the gland doesn't change that there's an immune inflammatory process going on. Whether you get diagnosed with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's or both, there's an immune issue going on. Giving you thyroid medication doesn't change the fact that you still have an immune-driven process going on in your body. So there's a good chance that the thyroid medication may create a short-term honeymoon response, but it's not going to make you optimally healthy, okay? It can mask and manage labs and symptoms temporarily, but it doesn't restore health. The other primary cause is iodine deficiency, which nobody checks for, but that could be the other issue. And if you give somebody thyroid medication who has iodine deficiency, that will not fix the problem either. You need to address why they have an iodine deficiency, what's preventing them from absorbing iodine, are they not consuming iodine, or is there something inhibiting iodine from getting to the thyroid gland to make thyroid hormone? And why do we care? Well, because iodine has an impact on a whole bunch of systems on the body. And so just if somebody's iodine deficient, giving them thyroid hormone won't fix the issue, okay? So we look at her labs. I recommended to her physician that we reduce the dose. They reduced the dose from 100 micrograms to 86 micrograms. TSH goes to 10. And so this is where the physician is saying, wow, we need to increase the dose. And I'm like, I don't think so. Now the patient actually feels a little bit better, less anxious, but If we look, when we run a full panel, we can kind of see that even though TSH is 10, there's plenty of T4 in the system at 9.7. The total T3 is 84. It's still within the lab reference range, maybe not within somebody's optimal range, but there's plenty of thyroid hormone in the system. If we look at free T3, it's 1.3. There's enough free T3 available, free T4 available. The free T3 hasn't really changed much. It's at 2.5. So it has, nothing's really changed here, and reverse T3 went up to 22. So there's more going on here than just the medication. There's a lot of work and life stress going on as well that may have contributed to the jump in TSH and to the rise in reverse T3. But again, that conversion, that free T3 to free T4 conversion is still not great. We see a rise in the antibodies. We do see a drop in the thyroglobulin antibodies. So patient still has some signs and symptoms. I don't like this conversion. And so I make the recommendation that despite the TSH at 10, that we reduce the dose again. The dose gets reduced from 86 micrograms of levothyroxine to 71 micrograms of levothyroxine, and the TSH is 9.08. Again, this is a medical physician's like, we need to increase the dose. But I said, look at the total values. Total T4 is still 7.9. Total T3 is 86, right? And so if we look at the free T4, it's 1.0. The free T3 is 2.4. The reverse T3 has come down a little bit at 19. But this is important. This conversion is even better at this point, 0.29. Antibodies are continue to come down. So the person's actually doing a little bit better at this point. We continue to do some work on diet, lifestyle, and some of the detoxification supports, and what are the things driving that excessive cell stress response. March, we take another look at the labs, same dose of thyroid hormone, TSH 8.64. Again, plenty of thyroid hormone in the system. So what is going on with this person? If there's plenty of T4, 9.4, it's actually higher. So she's got plenty of T4 in the bloodstream. There's plenty of free T4. It's 1.56. Why is TSH still high? Well, we look at the total T3, it's at 72. The free T3 is at 2.2. And if we look at this ratio, reverse T3 jumped to 24. We look at the ratio at 0.17. There is still something creating this excessive cell stress response, and there's a potential that there's still too much thyroid hormone in the system. So there's a lot of stressors going on along with the thyroid medication. So patient's thyroid medication gets dropped again, and now she's at 57 micrograms per day. We look at TSH, first, somebody looks at this, they're going to definitely want to prescribe more thyroid medication. This physician wanted to increase the dose to 225 micrograms per day to get that TSH down into the reference range. But if we look at the totals again, what's going on? The patient's total T4 is 9.6. There's plenty of T4 in the bloodstream. There's plenty of T3 in the bloodstream at 110. Free T4 is 1.4. Free T3, which is really, the T3 is what really impacts the tissues, is at 3.6. Reverse T3 is at 11. This conversion is 0.43. This is an indication, well, now there's overconversion of T4 to T3. Thyroid antibodies are coming down. Thyroglobulin antibodies that really don't do any damage to the gland. They're actually within the normal range, and the TPO antibodies are coming down. What's going on in this situation? One, there's excessive cell stress, and we probably need to look at iodine levels in this person to see if she has sufficient iodine. I know you're not supposed to take iodine if you have elevated TPO antibodies, but we need to see if she has sufficient iodine. If there isn't sufficient iodine, then we need to figure out, does she have a diet? Is she consuming iodine in her diet, or are there things that are impeding iodine from getting to the thyroid gland? So we need to do some assessment and testing there. The other thing we need to do is figure out what else might be driving the immune response. organisms, toxins, thoughts. We're still working on this process. But here is one of those cases where somebody might have been put on thyroid hormone medication to lower a TSH to try and manipulate signs and symptoms, but it probably wasn't appropriate. And that's hard to say. I'm not a prescribing physician. And I know physicians want to help out their clients. If they have signs and symptoms, if TSH is elevated, let's just give it to them. But this is the downside to running a TSH only. If they only ran a TSH and it's 12, they're going to put somebody on more thyroid medication. And in this case, this is another situation where the person doesn't need more T4 in the system, okay? If you have an immune-driven disorder, we need to identify what's driving the immune disorder. If you have iodine deficiency, we need to address the iodine deficiency. If you've got both, we need to address both. But overloading somebody with thyroid medication who does not need it is only problematic. Hopefully this helps. Put your questions below.